Hello, everyone, and welcome.
Welcome all. Wait for just a more minute or so.
Let's see. I'm looking through the attendees. Oh, I see people I know. Get that. Awesome.
Nice.
I think I see some hecklers though. We may have to boot. We may have to boot out a couple people. I'm just kidding. I'm just. How can you heckle KQL? It's impossible.
Yeah, maybe through PowerShell. Just flip the switch, the options. Everyone is safe. So now it's a free for all.
Great. All right, I suggest let's get started and respect people's time. So for everyone who joined, welcome to the very first episode of KQL Cafe.
Nice to have you all.
So yeah, this is our very first show. And we will get started by briefly explaining what this is all about. So a couple of months ago, Johnny and myself, we were discussing and talking, and we felt like, you know what? We need a community for KQL. I mean, there's so many people, and we'll talk about that in our first episode anyway. But there's a lot of people, doing KQL for quite a while. There's quite some traction. KQL, gets some popularity. We see more and more people, starting to learn KQL. And although there's books and blogs, we thought, let's give this a community. So yeah, our mission is really to make, to build a community, to have a better place with KQL. And of course, also to provide you with a platform to learn, share, and practice your KQL experiences and learn the language.
Yeah, because also in the end you can learn by doing. So it's best to talk about it and to share ideas and also to share detections. You can, for instance, share your detections and your hunting queries on the GitHub pages of Sentinel, of Defender, and also like Matt Zorek does, you can share it on your own GitHub. It's always nice to contribute and to build a better community.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, let's briefly explain what we plan and how we plan to run the show. But yeah, okay. First of all, your hosts. Now, important thing, this is supposed to become a community. So the intention is that, not just Jenny and I are going to talk throughout all the shows. That's also why we have invited guests. But yeah, a little bit about ourselves. Johnny, you want to start with a brief introduction?
So I'm Johnny Castaldi. I've started with KQL back in 2019 when I was starting to work with Azure Sentinel, Microsoft Sentinel, and I started building the detections and figuring out stuff to make detections better. And later on, I started my Custo King blog also to share knowledge about the KQL language. And, my main job is to make things more secure with KQL.
Great. So yeah, I'm Alex Verboon. I'm actually working with KQL since I think 2017, 18, where we were still talking about the term OMS. So with Azure, first log analytics, and then luckily advanced hunting and KQL also came to Microsoft Defender, which I'm also using since back 2016. And I would say, for a long time, PowerShell was my first professional love, and now I notice myself that I spend more time fiddling with KQL, writing detection rules, using KQL all across the platforms, and share my code, share my snippets. Yeah. Okay. Let's try to quickly mute someone here.
Yeah.
So that's basically about me. So how we plan to run the show. On the next slide. Oh no, I'm totally back.
The most important one.
Yeah. Great. So today I would like to introduce our very first guest, and I guess everyone who has been doing something with KQL or is actually learning and practicing, knows Trent. Rod, a few words about yourself.
A few words about myself. I'm not the person to do that. It's probably like my wife or somebody else could probably do a much better job. But anyway, I'll talk a little bit more about my experiences here in a little bit about KQL. But I am a cloud security advocate with Microsoft. I've actually been with Microsoft in relative terms a very, very short time. I've been at Microsoft since tax day, April 15th of 2019, right? All along before that, I've worked alongside Microsoft on a number of things. People now, which is kind of interesting, think of me as, Microsoft Sentinel. They think of me at KQL. But in the old days, they thought of me as SMS and SCCM and Endpoint Manager and Intune and all that good kind of stuff. Not that I intended to do it, but I was able to kind of shed that kind of persona. I don't even work with that stuff anymore, which is kind of interesting. I'll talk a little bit about that later as well. But I work here at Microsoft. Really, absolutely enjoy it. I am a father of 4. My youngest is actually 13. My oldest is 31. So you can kind of see the range of scope there. So for every kid that I have, obviously I have gray hair for that, right? But that makes me feel like I'm wise potentially when it comes to life things, though. Every day kind of throws something weird and strange at you, because a couple weeks back I had my first kidney stone episode, and oh my goodness, that was one of the most difficult things I've ever done. It was unexpected. I'm also a grandfather. Had my first grandkid this past year, and I tell you, I love being a dad, but I absolutely love even more being a granddad. That is the most amazing thing. Anybody that's ever experienced that, exactly what I'm talking about. Being a grandparent is awesome. It's even better than KQL, I would hazard to say. So I'll leave that there. Okay, that's me. That's me. You see my other stuff here. There's my blog, the Must Learn KQL series, which we'll talk about in a little bit. You can always find me somewhere, right? I don't hide from people. It's really easy to find me. So if you have questions, comments, suggestions, commentary, you just want to tell me that I suck, that's even fine, because that, it's all constructive criticism. You can always find me on Twitter or LinkedIn or, various other places. So anyway, that's me. I'll turn it back to you all. I know you have some things to look into.
Right. I do have a small question, Rod, because
yes,
we're giving away the mugs which you designed like yesterday for the guest speakers.
Yeah.
And I think it's nice if you can tell a bit more, because the mugs are actually for a sponsoring for a. If you can tell us a bit more.
And without getting too far ahead of myself. I will talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, absolutely. So, and I think Johnny and Alex both will appreciate this, but the Must Learn KQL series has its own merch store, as the kids say, right? And we'll talk about that a little bit later. And it's not an effort to accumulate, my millions. It's more so to just help out charity and stuff like that, which we'll talk about. So
Okay.
yeah, we'll talk about that here shortly.
Cool. Let's continue.
So as you see here, our plan, we've made big plans. As I mentioned in the introduction, Jenny and I have been spending quite some evenings, and it always ran out longer than we had scheduled, to actually prepare already, the first couple of shows, brainstorm what we want to do, who we want to invite. So yeah, I'm pleased to say that as for now, we plan to run the show on every third Tuesday. Exceptions, of course, public holidays, vacation, and whatever. Microsoft Ignite or any other. Can there be a more important thing? Well, yes. Yeah, since we're both based in Europe, right now, scheduled time is planned for 6 to 8. But maybe as we go down the road, we might once in a while adjust to another time zone, to welcome our friends from Asia, Australia, or US. And yeah, for registration or information about upcoming sessions, you just go to Meetup, to KQLCafe, and there, we will, make the announcements. We'll provide an agenda, and of course also announce the speakers that we will have in our show. Yeah.
And also follow us on Twitter.
Yeah, basically we'll be with everything, that a show needs, right? We're on Twitter, we're on Meetup, we have a GitHub repository, and yes, we will also, I will do my best, and Johnny, to write show notes. So, everything we talk about in the show, any links, any additional material, like you might know from other podcasts or videos, we'll do our best to add those links for later reference. Yeah. So, yeah, well, the plan is, we are a community, but we had to start somewhere. So we thought for today, we'll talk a little bit about where do we do KQL. What are options, especially for those that maybe are not lucky enough yet to work in an environment where their employer already uses Azure or Defender. There are several free options. You don't have to spend a dime, and you can still practice that. Then, as we mentioned, although maybe many of you attending this show might already be familiar with KQL, but our intention is also to give people who just start learning an opportunity. They might look back to this video a few months later. So we will definitely speak briefly about some top operators, and we will continue to do that as we go along with the show. Then we will briefly talk, and we will also repeat that topic in upcoming shows, how to find new things that we have found. And when we talk about how to find, talking about new things, KQL is very much about exploring data, right? Doing things with data. So there's always, depending on the product features and capabilities, some new interesting data that comes up in KQL. So we want to highlight those as well. Maybe Johnny, you want to continue?
Yeah. So the working with IOCs, that's what I usually use KQL for. You can use it in several places. I'll discuss them later on. Features worth mentioning, there's always new stuff in KQL, a bit related to Sentinel, to M365D. So we're going to have some fun with that. And of course, today's guest speaker, we want a guest speaker every month. So if you have something nice to tell, or if you want to talk something about KQL, you can send us a message, and we can see for next month if you can join, and also for the great mug, of course. And then what did you do with KQL this month? We always, we use it for our work. So this month I did something with external data, which I will show later. Alex also had something to play with. And of course, the KQL challenge. We want to try to have people think about the using of KQL and how to do things, and also a bit on sharing the things. So maybe in a later session, we'll discuss detections, and we will ask people to create detections on GitHub, on the Sentinel GitHub, or on the M365D GitHub, just to get people playing with KQL. And also, if you have any issues, or if you want something, or you need something to know about KQL, then we can also discuss those.
Yeah, so that's mainly, hopefully, that becomes the more interactive part of the show, beside Johnny and I talking and our guest. So yeah, if you think, I did something cool, and it doesn't always have to be that KQL query with 20 lines and loops and MVX bonds and whatever. Sometimes the beauty of KQL queries, as our friend Matt Zori from Australia shows us, you can have 4 or 5 lines of KQL code and pull out, very good data out of the various systems. Yeah.
Yeah. And
right. So yeah, that's the agenda.
We'll also talk about detections. And for instance, if you have also people who use Power BI or have some big data solution which they want to share or talk about, because in the end, security is also using data, so we can also find each other in there.
Yeah, definitely.
Then
great.
Where do we KQL?
Yeah, so where KQL? So I guess the most prominent products from Microsoft where we can apply KQL, of course, is first of all is Microsoft 365 Defender. Not just Microsoft Defender for endpoint, but in the last 2-3 years, Microsoft put everything under the umbrella of Microsoft 365 Defender, including Defender for Office, Defender for Identity, Defender for Cloud Apps, formerly known as Cloud App Security. And while you can spend your time in the portal and click around, sometimes you want to do things maybe quicker or look at more data. So that's why we have advanced hunting built into the Microsoft 365 security portal. Now, unfortunately, if you're not a customer, there's no, let's say, free version of it, but we get to that later. What options you would have. And then, of course, there's Microsoft Sentinel, our cloud SIEM solution. And yeah, that one, there's also possibilities, where with little cost, you can put up a Microsoft Sentinel instance. And then underlying, we have Log Analytics or Azure Monitor or whatever, from whatever angle you look at it. And last but not least, Data Explorer. And there's actually another one coming out. Yeah. So although this is not 100% KQL, it's a subset of the KQL language. But for those that are not in security or in Azure management, but maybe still, working on-prem with Microsoft Endpoint Configuration Manager, formerly known as, Config Manager, SMS, whatever you call it, with CMP box, you can actually also do some beautiful things and apply the KQL language. Yeah. So yeah, if you want to do things for totally free, if you're following the show or following Rod's instructions from the Master KQL learning series, you can go to this link and you don't need anything to pay. You just need a valid Microsoft account, and then you can go and access this log analytics workspace. And the beauty is it's not empty. It's full with data. So Microsoft does, pump this log analytics data workspace with data from various sources. So you also have the possibility, to understand, what type of data types and tables and attributes you have in there, and use that for your own learning. Yeah. Then another option is Azure Data Explorer. Here, basically the same. You can also access this link. You don't need to pay anything. And again, you get instant access to data in Azure Data Explorer. And as we move forward, we will definitely dedicate one show where we'll look at Azure Data Explorer in more detail. When to use it, how to use it. But these are basically, the free options, to get yourself going without, having to provision anything. And again, no credit cards, anything needed. Now, if you're looking at Microsoft 365 Defender, of course, you're always free, to sign up for a trial. And then, wait for that one to be approved. And then at least, you can spend, I believe it's 60 or 90 days, and play around with Microsoft 365 Defender or Defender for Endpoint. Yeah. So these are the places that, also Jenny and I will use during our interactive sessions, unless we want to show something that we have in our own demo tenants, etc.
Yes. So then the next slides will be mine. As we want to do the top 8 operators. That's one of the KQL basics we have thought of. And we want to show a bit about operators on, for instance, this one will be the actual basics, the search ones, the summarize ones, to get people started. And then later on, we can do stuff like parsing, extracting, and stuff like that. So the first 8 that we want to discuss are the search one, project, has and contains, when to use which, the distinct, summarize, extend, take or limit, and also the join. And we think those ones are the basic ones, right?
Yeah, I would say if you master those, and not yet looking at, decomposing and extending and extracting and parsing and whatever, but just to get a feel for, okay, you're now on that web console, on the left side, you have all those tables, and you can double click on those tables and just execute. And of course, it will load data. But, if you now want to really start practicing, we suggest that you become familiar with these KQL operators. Yeah, so give it a shot.
What I've done, I've took some screenshots of the queries, and also later on we will share the queries in our GitHub, so you can change them and play around a bit with them. So the first one is the search operator, where you can do searches about stuff that you, if you want to do a contain search or has search or has prefix, has suffix, or in different tables, or if you want just a column in all tables. I think it's better if I start showing them. So over here, let's make it a bit bigger. Can you read this, Alex? Is it readable?
Yes. Yeah.
So the first one is the contains operator. It's the search, but when you use the asterisk before and after, it becomes the same as contains. So you don't have to do first a search and then a contains or a has. And you can also do it without the asterisks, and then you have the has. And the difference between those two I will show a bit later on.
Now we could have a discussion like we had back in the days with PowerShell, right? Should you use aliases or shortcuts for readability or not?
Yeah,
that's maybe an interesting discussion for the community to have. Yeah.
Will be a long one.
Yeah.
And when you do a asterisk on the end, you can have a prefix search, and then it looks in all the tables just to make sure that everything starts with Johnny will pops up. Also do a suffix one where you get everything that ends with KQL, my domain. And that's a good way because, for instance, if you have maybe a domain, or if you have a last name that you want to show, and then you can also do the search but specify the tables. But you can also use the asterisk search, because in the end you have like the new tables for the service principal name and all the new auditing stuff. It's in that table. And you can also see when you hover over it with your mouse, you can see actually which tables will show. That's also a nice one. And then you can also search for a specific column name. And then also, in this case, my email address. So this will return all the tables where there's a user principal name with my mail address. So you can see there's non-interactive logons and there's the sign-in logins. And this way you make sure that you have all the right columns, all the right tables selected. I see Niels has a question. If you want to unmute or if you want to type it.
So, guys, I'm coming from the Azure Data Explorer world, and with SQL Server and stuff like that before that. So what is this search operator searching? So when you're writing search Gianni, line 8, what is it searching?
It's searching for all the values, and then this is a prefix search, so all the values which start with Johnny. So
Sure. I get that. I get that there is search for values, but what does it search? Does it search every single table? What does it search?
Yeah, this is Rod. I can kind of interject if you'd like. Coming also from the SQL side and Data Explorer and stuff like that. This is similar to a select asterisk from, all, right? So if you're doing a search for the string, it's searching literally all tables for that specific string. In what Johnny's shown here as well is that he is also using search to limit it to specific tables, to specific data columns and stuff like that. So you can be very specific with what you look for, but it's very similar to SQL in that it is searching across all tables that exist.
Okay, cool. Thank you. That's what I wanted. Cool. Thank you so much.
And of course, in a production environment where the more tables you have, typically
probably not a good idea.
Well, it's Microsoft CPU, but no.
By the way, in respect to KQL, what we're doing on the back end is extremely important because this is a cloud-based, cluster-based query language. It doesn't matter. It's going to grab as much compute and clustering as it needs to get the job done and get those results to come back a lot quicker than you can imagine from another query language that's basically on-prem or even SQL. Sure. Even SQL in the cloud, it uses the power of the cloud to produce those results. So it's going to be a lot quicker, and it really doesn't matter. I mean, yeah, there's going to be limitations, but those limitations are so vast. You'll probably never run up against them.
Cool. Thank you.
I saw that Dennis raised his hand.
Yeah, I had a question related to wildcards and the regex stuff. I see on the line 8 we already have some kind of wildcard at the end, but what other types of regexes slash functions are supported inside the string to search?
The regex is supported in string search. Well,
Yes.
you can use the parse operators to use regex. And then you can also specify different types of regex. And I guess the best thing to do is to get the tech doc on that, because it's large. Tech doc regex Gusto parse. This is the parse operator, where you can do several kinds of searches. You can do simple search, regex search, and from the regex you can.
Okay.
Yeah,
Over
while
here.
you're doing that as well, I just want to let you know, we do have a SQL to KQL cheat sheet out in our docs. I just created a short link for you, so it's easy to get to because the chat's not working for me. If you go to aka.ms/SQL2, the number 2, KQL, it will take you directly to that cheat sheet for those that are familiar with SQL.
Nice, man. Let's see. Okay. Pretty cool. Dennis, does the regex, does this answer your question, or?
Yeah, totally.
Cool.
Also, first question in relation to pricing and how the query is performing. So let's take a comparison like Cosmos DB. So they have resource units, I think. How that does what is the alternative here to monitor billing and how much a query costs?
Query, yeah.
So
executing.
unless
Sorry.
you're a customer that's large enough that you've acquired or you're paying for extra compute or extra clustering, querying costs nothing. What you get when you get into cost within Azure, particularly from a data set, you're talking about data ingestion and retention. Those things cost. There's some tables that cost more than others, depending on how noisy they are and how much, how noisy that ingestion is. But it's relatively simple. The query itself, for example, as Alex was talking about earlier, we have this aka.ms/LA log analytics demo. That's what we call our KQL playground. All you need is a Microsoft user account to log into this thing. It costs nothing. It literally costs nothing to run these queries. Like I said, unless you're one of these huge, immense, massive organizations that have to buy their own clustering because they have, I don't know. I can think of a couple customers that are like this, but it's very rare. But if you have mass seas of data, then you might need that sometimes, depending on how many tables you're trying to query at once. The idea behind KQL, though, and particularly from a security standpoint, is that you want to tune the query so that it's very specific. You use something like search to identify if it exists. And if it exists, then we start to tune it so that your results are very specific. So at that point, you're probably only querying 1 or 2 tables, right? So not everything at once. So as you start tuning these queries, the performance actually absolutely improves as well.
And we have planned for an upcoming show to actually, not per se talk about, costing. I mean, for that you go to Azure costing, Microsoft, whatever. But we will definitely, as I see a lot of demand during my day job, people want to understand, where is my data growing? What is it that makes my bill 1,000 and maybe the next month, 1,200? Where to look at? Also, depending on the data connectors you have connected, there are a few things. Without getting ahead of myself, but you want to keep an eye on, like as an example, the Azure AD non-interactive sign-in logs. You have a user that left the company, he's still logged on into VDI. Those are things you want to look at. But yeah, we'll get to that in another show. and talk about how that could potentially impact your size, table size, and of course indirectly also the cost. Yeah.
Yes. So let's go to the next slide. So the next step is if you searched for your data and you know what you want to see, for instance, certain columns that you want to see, or only certain columns that you want to keep or remove columns, you can do that with the project operators. There are several. You have the project keep, project away, rename, and reorder. And the names explain themselves, of course, but let's just open them up. So for instance, the first one, I did a search on all tables with the user principal name where the value is johnny@kustoking.com, and I only want to show the table, and I rename the user principal name to email, and then I show the client app used, app display name, time generated, and then it will only show these columns, and my data set size will only be this. So if I want to work, for instance, with multiple data sets, I can save them with a let statement, and then I can play around with smaller data sets. Or if I want to do a join with this data set, then it will be quicker than with all the columns in there. And we can also do a project keep. That will only keep these columns, but the difference is the order of the columns. And then if I want to show all the columns, but for instance I want to remove my IP address column from there, I can do the project away, and then now I can show you all the columns without, for instance, showing my IP address, or maybe you want to hide any other data columns for your specific data set. You can use the project away one. You can also use the project rename if you want to rename multiple columns. For instance, you can rename the user principal name to email, or you can use rename the table for the $table for table. And also a nice one to use is the project reorder, where you take these columns and show them first. So if you have a large data set, then you can show those 4 or how many you assign, and then the rest will follow later on. That way, if you play around with data, then you can easily show what you want instead of sliding around. For instance, if you do have multiple columns which you want to compare, then this is the way. So that's the project one. And the next one is the has and contains. So you have those 2 operators, and they are more or less the same, but the has operator is faster and more efficient because of the way it works. It takes it gets your whole all the values and put them in blocks of 4 characters. So if you do a search longer than 4 characters, it will work. But if you do a has with 3 characters, then it won't work. And it's also looking for alphanumerical values. So if you have a dot in there, then it won't work. But in the end, it's a much faster way to query your data. And also there are some, there is, for instance, a 10-minute limitation. And also sometimes if you're hunting, you don't want to wait that long. You want to do some clean coding in here. So for instance, this is the one where I have the user principal name. That one works. And if I look for just the 3 characters, then it won't find anything, because this is how KQL works. So if I want to look for those 3 characters, then I can use the contains operator. And when I use contains, it will find everything that contains the first 3 characters. And then I can also do a contains, because has and contains by themselves aren't case sensitive. So when I do _CS, it will try to find it case sensitively, but then it won't work because the user principal name is in lowercase. Let's go in here. And then down here. Over here. It's all lowercase, so you can't find it when it's case sensitive. And you can also do a has all. It's a newish operator where you can use multiple values and you make sure that they all contain. So if I have johnny@custodking.com, has all will find it when it contains both Johnny and custodking. So in some use cases, you can also use the has all operator. And the next one is the distinct one. For instance, if you have a big data set and you want to use a join, then you can get a distinct, for instance, for all user principal names. And you can also get a sample distinct where you show a number of distinct values. So when you do it in KQL, it will look like this. So for instance, in the last 24 hours, I have my these three user principal names, and this one is actually a GUID for one of both user principal names. And then you can, for instance, take the sample distinct for the app display name. That's a value in the sign-in logs to show which applications have been accessed. And these are random 5 distinct app display names. Go to the next one. The summarize. Once you have your data set, for instance, you want to do a count, or you want to show a set of values, or you want to get the large ones, or you want to do a distinct count, you can use the summarize. Because then you can aggregate based on everything before by, and then by all the values you put after it. And in the tag docs, you can also find which values you can aggregate on. When we do it over here, you can do a summarize count to show how many occurrences of those specific app display names were in the last 24 hours. But you can also make a set based on user principal name. So for instance, my Hotmail account only accessed the Azure portal, while my @custodking domain was a bit more busy. And this one was from my mobile phone. And then if you do this one, then you can show per user principal name and per location. And that way you can summarize more specifically. And then for instance, I can also show per application, per app display name, and the last time it occurred. And also you can, with summarize argmax, you can choose which columns you want to show. And then you can see the last time. And for instance, if I put in location over here, then it will only show those 2 values. So the summarize is great to display your name and even use it further. Then the next one is the extend, because KQL, it's a read-only language. So you won't be modifying the data itself, but you can temporarily extend new columns so that you can play around with the data or to search better for it. When we look here, you can show, for instance, I did a string concatenate based on the time generated and the name of the table, and then with the name new column. And you can also create multiple columns by comma separating. So for instance, over here, I have created 2 columns, and it depends on if the columns have data or if they exist. And you can show that even while it doesn't have data, it will show up here. And if it has, it will also show the data, of course. And the next one is the take and the limit. And take and limit both do the same. They present 10 records, but they don't necessarily show the 10 latest. So, for instance, if we do this one, it just shows 10 records, and over here also. And if you want to show the 10 latest, you can do a sort before you do the take or the limit. Or you can also use the top operator and then tell them where to sort it out with. So for instance, if I do this, then I get the latest 10 based on the time generated. And those are the 8 main search operators we will use. We have one more, the join one. And join is always a bit to play around with because to start with, the default one is always the inner unique kind. You have several kinds of joining. You have the inner unique, you have the inner, left anti, right anti, of course, left semi, right semi, left outer, right outer. And those are they are like also the SQL joins, but in the beginning I always have to play around a bit with them to figure out which one to use again.
Yeah, I have that very same experience. I think if there's one operator I've been looking up constantly in the docs, it was, okay, how was this about inner, outer, left? And I guess the best tip I can give here is, create a small data set, like when I'm in Defender. Ideally, you can even relate to the GUI. However, there also a little tip, be careful, because when you look at the GUI, sometimes the data that you see in the UI, even when there's no filter on how many days, a good example is in the threat and vulnerability management recommendations. It will tell you that you have 20 devices, not sending sensor data. There's no way you can influence the time, but by default, it's around 30 days it's showing there. So when you do this in KQL, in advanced counting, and you set it to 7 days, you get different numbers. If you set it to 30 days, you get the exact same numbers, and that helps. If you have a way to either really pin it down to one reference or 10 records, and you have a way to go kind of circle back and validate that. That's how I avoid my join errors, because sometimes it might look like, oh, this is okay, and it wouldn't have been the first time. I'll share a query with the community or over Twitter, and I got someone coming back to me and says, hey, Alex, I got some other results, and then it turned out that based on the circumstances, based on the data that other people might have, that you have to work with the join and fine tune the kind parameter. Yeah.
So the default one, if you don't specify a kind for your join, then it's a inner unique, and an inner unique join, it will take the first line it will find on the left column. So for instance, if I do it like this, then I have over here I have the sign-in logs, and I join it with the 5 random app display names. And then it will take the first record it finds in the left column by default. And so you get 5 records. If I do the same join, but then instead of the inner unique, the default one, I use the inner, then it shows 20 records, because then it will show all matches between the left and the right side. And over here, if I do a left anti, then I only want to show what's on the left and not on the right, but I haven't used more than 5 app display names, so it's not showing anything. Then if we turn it around with the left semi, then it will show again all 20 records, because I've only used 5 app display names. So for my next demo, I will be sure to use more than 5 apps, and then it will show the differences. And you can also do a left outer, but just for demo purpose. So I should now have some empty columns, because what it does after the join, if there's 2 columns, then the one on the right will be appended with a 1. So this way, these 2 applications weren't in this one. Well, that's the way you can play with your left anti, and of course right, left semi, right semi, left outer, right outer, or full outer if you want to show both. Because I missed that one, I can do a full outer. Then it will show everything, and then over here. But I don't have any unique values on the right side. So if you do a full outer, then you show everything from both columns if it's match or no match. So those are the 8 operators we wanted to show for today. And now the next one is how to find new things. You're on mute.
Yeah. Okay, let me share my screen. So yeah, I mean, we could talk probably for hours about this, but just to give you an idea, and we will also elaborate that in future sessions. But yeah, one of my besides family and doing other fun stuff, hobbies is to explore whatever is in the data tables. Since I'm working daily with Microsoft security products, depending on what data you're ingesting, and of course what features the product team is working on, you suddenly might get more signals, and those signals or events are then turned into those tables. So one cool thing to do is, to familiarize yourself now and then, is to simply, take a table. One, when you work with Microsoft 365 Defender, obviously, is device events. By the way, you see the whole schema here on the left-hand side, specifically for Microsoft Defender. The same, of course, would apply also if we are in log analytics, where you would have all the tables in here, log management, Microsoft Sentinel. And now I'm just, in this, let's say, typically for me, Friday afternoon, almost weekend, beer is waiting, but I still have to hang on for another hour. And that's my moment where I think, okay, let's take a look at, is there something new? Now, there are also queries for this. Actually, just yesterday, Matt from Australia sent one, especially if you're ingesting your data into Azure Sentinel. There's a way how you can basically, take this data and compare it with the last 30 days versus the last 7 days, and do all those joins, and then also find out, whether there are new names. But a simple one, just to start with the basics, is, you just take device events. We know from device events that, for example, action types are interesting. And yeah, here a practical example. We take device events, we take distinct, like Jenny showed before, and we are looking at the action types, right? And once I know an action type, I can say, okay, I want to dig more into this action type. I go back up. Yeah, I now added this, and I do the following. And now I am going to just look at, LDAP search events. And here the story actually continues, because in almost all events that we have, there's always a field. Let me make Johnny a little bit smaller here, called additional fields. And because this is all JSON, so this is not an RDBMS like we know from Oracle or SQL, the information in additional fields can be dynamic. If it's an action type of LDAP search, we might have additional information related to that search, right? If we go back and do a distinct again, and now I want to look like another one, and I say, okay, antivirus report, and I do this again, and now I'm curious about, anything related to the action type of antivirus report. I get this data back, and we will see that in additional fields, I only have one value. And the same you can do here over in Sentinel, where, for example, we look at audit logs, and I do a distinct on operational name, right? Let's see what type of operations are available, right? Okay, nothing happened here in the last 3 days. Okay, been quiet at Microsoft. Okay, funny. Then let's just do signing logs, and I do like Johnny did, user principal name. Yeah. Okay, funny. Let's. I always have a backup plan, so let's go here. Go here and just go to my own log analytics workspace and just redo that thing. So logs, distinct, operations name. Okay, and say, okay, I want to do this. Yeah, and now, okay, I see, reset user passwords. Now in the log analytics, we do it a little bit different. If we don't want to type, you simply click on here and you say, okay, include, right? Okay, you can go back here, exclude that, and now we see, okay, reset user password. And here, although the UI is a little bit different, but the story is the same, when you see here initiated by, that in itself, is again a JSON object. So if you wanted to grab that information, of the user principal name inside, you can here click on extend, right? And this is what Johnny showed before. We can use extend, we can say user principal name, and then he, basically pulls out that information, and use it like that. And that's really, a way to explore, what's in there, what's maybe new, and what could be trigger your curiosity, to actually find out what information is in here. And of course, we use it not just for fun, but maybe there's interesting information in there with regard to security detections, or maybe you're more from the operational side, and you want to monitor or trigger alerts based on when certain things happen in your environment. Yeah. Another way to also explore new things, besides, of course, the Microsoft documentation, is to go here to the schema reference. Again, we're now back in Microsoft 365 portal. And here, basically, we see, an overview of all the tables, and we can go to device events. And when we click on device events, and because Microsoft knows, we're all super interested in action types because they are important for us from a security perspective, because these are basically the translations. So, while in classical event forwarding, we would look for an event ID like 51789, whatever. But basically, Microsoft Defender for Endpoint does that work for us. So it will translate that into an action type called, for example, local user created. Yeah. So that's another way how you can find about new information. And then when you go to the very bottom, let me make it smaller. We can actually here also click on here, then we get the details on all the information that's in the table, explanations, types of the information, strings, etc. And typically you would also have some examples here. So, if you want to do this, you will get a complete example, to parse or look up the data. Yeah. So yeah, that's very short, as we assume that maybe some of you are beginners. So this is a way how you can, with those basic KQL functions that, not functions, operators that Johnny showed you. And if you have some data either in your own tenant or in one of the demo tenants, this is a way how to find maybe interesting data attributes you want to explore more and digest and, build your queries upon. Okay. Back to you, Johnny.
Awesome. So share screen. Okay, so also a good place, like Alex already explained, is the tech docs, because you always have the latest and greatest information over there. And the next one is working with IOCs. You can use IOC data in 365 Defender, and you can use it in Microsoft Sentinel. And you can do that in several ways. Like you can use it in your queries. In Sentinel, you have the watch list and the threat intelligence indicators. And you can also use external data from both 365 Defender and from Sentinel to make sure that you have the data you need. So let's switch to Sentinel. The first thing is the watch list. Watch lists now, I guess it's about 6 months in Sentinel. And you can add it through the portal. I'm going to do it like this. You can add it through the portal by adding just plain records or by adding CSVs. And you can edit them from here. You can add new watch lists from here. And I use this specific list to see these are made up of 2 block lists, one from the Feodo tracker and one from I think it's the proof point one, the emerging threats. And you can use it to compare it against your sign-in logs, for instance, or from your firewall logs. So if you want to use a watch list in your query, you can use it like this. So it's _ get watch lists and then the name of your watch list. But you can also do a let statement. So let IP is dynamic and then project IP address. So it's a bit freewheeling over here, but just to get it. So in this way, you can show your watch list data. You can use in queries, and you can also use, for instance, the API to populate the watch list and to get it working. Another option from Sentinel is the threat intelligence part. So you can import threat intelligence through the APIs, and you can use the taxi connector, and you can have several ways to input data. And you can use your detections, and you can also use it from queries. So if we paste it again, we have the threat intelligence indicators over here. And in this case, I'm just showing the 10 random ones. And you can see it also has an expiration time, which you can set from your import or from your connector. So for instance, if you have new threat intelligence every hour, you can have it expire after an hour, and then it will automatically be cleaned up. And you can also use it from your analytic rules. You can create a scheduled rule. It's a bit more Sentinel-like, but you can do it from the template rules. And then you can have detections over here, or you can also do it. Threat intelligence. They made the new rule. So you can create a rule, and it compares the threat intelligence against your common event forwarder, against your firewall logs, against all the data you have in your Sentinel. And that way you can also play around with it. And you can also use the external data one. This is a KQL operator, so you can use it both in Sentinel and in the 365 Defender portal. And what I do over here is I'll make a list, and then I look at the external data, and then I define the column. So netblock is a string, company is a string, and count is an integer. And then I've put up a list of ASN numbers of cloud providers. So I took from several cloud providers, I took the IP ranges, they have the IP blocks. So for instance, for DataCamp, for Cloud Radium, for some other ones. And I've put them all in a list. And this way you can compare them against your sign-in logs or against your Office activity. Because this way, this list contains, like I said, cloud providers, so VPNs, VPS, stuff that you usually don't expect your users to sign in from. And that way you can show if users are signing in from strange addresses. But I'll share more about that later. And those are the options you have to play around with IOCs or threat intelligence to make it even better. Then don't have any questions. We'll go to the next one about features worth mentioning.
Yeah, maybe before we move on, for those people who were like, Chinese, so not security people, what Johnny just showed, is basically a way how to combine data that's inside your log analytics that is coming from, let's call it a computer, or that's coming from a data source in Azure, like a signing logs. And now you want to bring in, I always call it, like human information or external information. So, and of course, technically what you could do and what we maybe did in the past was, okay, you have some custom data and you could create a custom table in your log analytics. But, and we will elaborate on that as we move forward, the thing is that, as Johnny explained, you cannot update data. And the data in log analytics, it's like going away, depending on your data retention settings. If you have set this to 90 days, after 90 days, you will not find that record back. So what if you had a list with those ASN numbers? If Johnny were to create a custom table with those ASN information, the problem is, first of all, whenever he executes that query on the first day, he would always have to also consider to say when time created, before those number of days. And after 90 days, that table will be empty. So one way that we use in log analytics or in advanced hunting is that we say, okay, if we have data that we don't want to go away, in simple terms, we don't have to store it in log analytics. So one way is basically to have a watch list, which is a little bit a special thing, because watch list, I always say, it's like static. You don't need a time information about how long you want to go back, or use an external list that can be hosted on GitHub, a CSV file, or you could also, if you have information that you don't feel you want to put on public GitHub, you could of course also store that in a Azure blob storage link. Yeah, but just to hopefully for those that are not maybe so into IOC, but why are we talking about watch lists or external data? These are kind of the use cases. Maybe a final one, you're an IT department, you have 10 people in there, they all have user principal names, and you're monitoring certain activity, and to reduce your false positives, or at least to lower maybe the severity level, you could create a detection query that says, okay, whenever someone adds a cloud-only user, create an alert. But if it's Johnny or Mark or Rod who does it, and it's during working hours, maybe it's a lower severity. Now, how does the system know that this is a valid admin? Well, you could create a watch list or an external data list where you put in the names of those IT operators, so that you can compare it with your data that you have in your log analytics database.
Cool.
So I hope I was able to explain that somehow. In the interest of time, Johnny, I suggest that we skip the next one about maybe we can add it to the end, and that we start introducing our guest and have Rod talking. Is that okay?
We first have two questions.
Oh, okay.
From Pravendra. I don't butcher your name.
Yeah. So I have a question regarding the updation of the blacklist. The IOC, the watch list. So as I'm saying, like if we try to update the watch list, then we need to do one by one. Like if we need to update, then we need to update one entry at a time. But if I have 100 of IPs for updation in the watch list, then do we need to create a new watch list, or we can update directly with someone?
What I tend to do is if I update a watch list, I will actually throw them away and upload it again, but you can also do that through the API. So you can use the Sentinel API, check the watch list. If it differs from your GitHub or your DevOps, then you can re-upload it, to delete it, and then upload it again.
Yeah,
Right.
that's the option. Okay. And the second question is basically, is there any connector if I want to use if I have some details or some data in my Google Sheet, okay, like some Google Sheet, and I just want to connect the same how you connected the GitHub through the GitHub. So is there any way to call a Google Sheet also?
Great question. I know you have some API options or some token options. For instance, but I'll have to get the crystal external data, because you have several ways to approach external data. You have a storage connection string, and from the storage connection string you can append the URI, and you can also append tokens.
Because I
you can-
tried to calling that, but I don't get any option. I think.
Okay. I think we need to test if that works. What we can do is after the show, I can send you a ping and we will see if it happens. And if not, then we can share it. You have the storage
Thanks.
connection strings. Okay, so for now it's just the blob storage and the Azure Data Lake storage, which you can use as storage connection string.
Okay.
But
Through the blog, we can update only for the time being.
But what you can do is if you have a script, a PowerShell or Python, and then collect the data from the Google one and store it in the watch list, that would be an option. And if it's threat intel, you can also use the security graph API to store it as a Sentinel threat intel.
Okay.
So
Why I'm looking for this option, because I don't want to update my watch list continuously. I just want to have one place like the storage, a blob storage. We can update continuously over there, and we can take data from there. So that's why I'm looking for one more option.
yeah. So I think for now the best thing, what I would do is if I would run a automation job which runs PowerShell to collect the data from the Google one, and then run it hourly.
Okay.
Does that make
So
sense?
by doing the PowerShell, I can collect the data from the Google, and then we can update that in a watch list or somewhere else.
You can do it in a watch list, or you can add it also as threat intelligence.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Cool.
Or on an Azure blob storage. If it's
So
private data. Yeah. Great.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. Do we have any other questions?
No, thanks for saying.
Cool. Let's continue to the slides. Let's say go to slides, skip a bit. Almost there. Click, 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 click. So, this week's special guest.
Boy, I hope it was worth it.
Of course.
Well, to skip all of those slides, hope we can come back to those. I was looking forward to those myself. Let me see something here. Right. Looks good. Let me share out my screen if you want me to do that now. And let's see what this is. This should be it. It's working. It's working extremely hard. I think it's working. So anyway, while this is trying to pull up, I do have kind of some slides to talk through. But number one, I just want to appreciate Alex and Johnny for having me on. I hope it's not, like I said, I hope it's going to be useful and valuable for everyone. It's taken a little bit for this to come up here. Can y'all still hear me?
Yes, we hear you, but we can no longer see you.
Oh, really? Is that what it is? All right, hold on just a second. Yeah, the little cursor is doing its little circle thing. It's chasing its tail. I hate to do this, but I blame it on Windows 11. So it's going to take a second, I think. Well, in that case, but anyway, I just want to thank you all for the ability to do this and have honest. This is your first podcast, so this is super awesome. I love anyone with the energy and enthusiasm for KQL, and it's still trying to work. Let me see what I can do here to make it hustle up. Let's see. I seem to be in a state of flux.
Oh,
wait.
now it's coming. Yeah.
Now you can see it. There we go.
Oh no.
Okay, we're still alive, but I think Rod is frozen. Okay, but you know what? We just let him come back. Not sure how long that will take. So until Rod is back, let me briefly let's do some improvisation. Talk about the thing I wanted to show you, and that is, where do we have it?
Page 23, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. So 23. Here we go. Yeah, great. Query packs. So I noticed that some people were quite confused, as you know, a few months back. You know, when you used to write queries in Log Analytics a while ago, and when you save those queries, you know, you would have them here under the Query Explorer. And at some point, you know, this is now gone, because when you access that now, it will tell you like, you know, this doesn't exist anymore. Now, depending on who you are in terms of your permissions, you know, nothing might change, because Microsoft migrated all those legacy queries into a what is called default query pack. But if you were someone with less permissions on the Log Analytics workspace, you might have nothing, or you will not be able to save queries. And this is because what Microsoft did is they introduced a thing called query packs. Well, you can read this all yourself afterwards, but in a nutshell, what it means that is like we have VMs and we have network cards and we have SQL databases in Azure. You know, query pack is also kind of its own thing, right? You can deploy it, you can deploy it as an ARM object, you can export it, you can import it. So it's, let's call it, even though it's the wrong definition, but like its own container in the whole Azure thing. So what's the benefit of that? You know, the cool thing is that we can now give permissions on query packs. The other cool thing is that we can use the query packs among multiple Log Analytics workspaces. So if you are working with the same queries, you know, before you had to copy paste them, you know, now you can use those query packs across your own Azure subscription in multiple Log Analytics workspaces if you have those. And if you're like us, a consultant, you know, you can start to maintain your favorite queries or your most wanted queries into a query pack. You can export it, and you can also easily import it. So, you know, again, not all this copy pasting whenever you're, you know, with a new client. And of course, you can also manage it from the API. So you go to your Azure portal, you know, and you can, like I do here you see the RBAC So you can clearly define, you know, who is allowed to view or edit or modify whatever is in that query pack. To access them, you know, click in Log Analytics here on the top. Let's make that a little bit bigger. You see here queries. Then this opens. Now this can be sometimes confusing, but actually when you click further, you can actually also use multiple query packs. So you see here we have the, you know, my Alex query pack and the default one. So whenever I save a new query, as you see here, you know, I give it a name, I give it a description, you know, and now what we have here, we have the option within my subscription to actually select in which query pack I want to save this. Then I highly recommend that, you know, use tagging, because honestly, sometimes it's a little bit difficult to find your stuff back if you haven't tagged it, right? Oh, yeah, I don't know, is Rod back meanwhile, or? Great, okay. Then,
I am back.
Yeah.
I am back. We
Right.
can try this again.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, I'm going to keep my video off while I do this. I think that had a little bit to do with it. I was blaming Windows 11, and I will always blame Windows 11. All
It's
right.
working. Yeah.
Can you see it? Can you see it now?
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to keep my video off. I think most people would enjoy the slide pictures more so than looking at me the whole time. All right. So that's all good. What I was kind of getting to before whatever happened here, you never figure out what it is exactly. Just kind of cross your fingers and hope it doesn't happen again next time. But I thank you so much for having me as this your first podcast. And like I said, hopefully it's worth it. The one thing that suggestion that I'm going to make, and take it as a grain of salt, take it however you want. I think just because we have the Custo King on the podcast, he should be forced to wear a crown every week. I don't know if you agree with that or not. I think because he's Custo King, I think that, and quite honestly, when the profile image came up for Johnny at the beginning, I expected the crown. There it is. That's awesome. Yeah. So I think
That's your crown, Johnny.
super awesome. And maybe, and we'll talk about it here in a minute, that's what the guests potentially should get. I don't know. The show guest or something like that. A nice Burger King crown. All right. So anyway, I appreciate you all having me, and thanks for those that are still listening in and watching and all that good stuff, despite what most people are familiar with as a Microsoft demo or slide deck just bombing or whatever. Understand that everything that we have working with Microsoft, everything that we have on our PC it's all beta software, right? So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So we'll just kind of hope that we can get through this here. But like I said, I appreciate you having me on. I think this is awesome. The energy and enthusiasm around this query language, I think, is key. You talked early on about developing community for KQL. I think that is huge and so very, 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 very important. The one thing that I would highlight about that community aspect is the simplicity, right, of KQL and learning this query language, but also the ability to take what you create, right? So you'll create some really cool things. You'll be extremely proud of it, but keeping it and hoarding it to yourself is, not how we build community. So you create something excellent, like I saw, Alex, he's developing the queries within M365 Defender. He creates something cool. It should be shared somewhere, right? And it's very, very easy for you to create excellent things that can be shared really easily outside of the KQL environment, whether it's log analytics or, advanced hunting and Defender or whatever it happens to be. So that's important. Just kind of keep that in mind. So really, though, to start out, I really want to spend some time today to iterate and reiterate, probably ad nauseum, how important KQL is to the future of everything. Okay, so looking through the list of folks that we have listening in today, and hopefully, those folks that are going to watch this or this later, my guess is we're talking probably 10, 15% of the people are experts or consider themselves experts, or we might consider them experts. Probably the rest of them are, newbies or beginners or whatever you want to call that. So we talked a little bit about this yesterday, Alex and Johnny and I, when we were planning for today's podcast and preparing. KQL is sort of like the next PowerShell. Okay, there I said it. So obviously, it's not a scripting language that helps automate things, right? But understanding data is probably more important than automating things. And that's kind of like a new kind of modern way of thinking, right? So, and just saying that's probably going to cause an argument or two somewhere. Hey, I've been an IT pro for a long time. Automation is everything that I do. You're telling me I have to swap everything for KQL. It's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying kind of have an open mind, okay? Because as we move and continue moving to this cloud model of computing, less and less time will be needed to automate and manage, right? At least that's the promise, part of the promise of the cloud. But understanding what's going on in your environment is absolutely critical. Things like, are our virtual machines still running? Is our web app functioning? Are our devices compliant? Can our users connect? Is the environment secure and protected? KQL is the tool to do all that. In fact, if I were anyone listening to this podcast right now and I had already started thinking about a career transition, KQL is absolutely an area that I'd put first on my list, or data science, or whatever you want to call it, right? So in fact, as deep as I am personally within Microsoft, with Microsoft Sentinel, I find myself getting even deeper with KQL all the time. And that's absolutely a good thing. KQL knowledge will absolutely make me a better threat hunter or security investigator. But KQL is part of everything, right? Anything with data in Azure can be queried with KQL. People don't tend to realize that even includes things like Intune, Endpoint Manager. We saw that earlier. If I needed to transition to something other than Microsoft Sentinel at Microsoft, right? This KQL knowledge that I've developed will actually bridge that gap, which will make that transition easier. And within your own organizations, having just a little bit of KQL knowledge is going to help you as well in that type of career move. All right. Okay, so I've been on this KQL kick for some time. Okay, I've been delivering Microsoft Sentinel workshops for, I'm trying to think here, a little over 2.5 years. Okay, as part of those workshops, right in the midst of it, there's a 3-hour session just on KQL. And it was that moment during those workshops where everything sort of clicked for customers. I could watch it. When we were still in person, those before this whole silly pandemic thing, I used to love watching those light bulb moments and see that realization flood across a customer's face, right? After we were done with this specific KQL session, it was difficult for me sometimes to even get their attention back to the other topics we had to cover and finish because they were so fascinated by how simple, easy to learn, well-performing, and powerful KQL is. That led me to delivering just KQL workshops periodically, right? Customers would ask for it. The people that we have internally, our customer success account managers, are like, oh, Rod does, he talks about KQL. Our customers really want to learn this thing. So I kind of forayed off of Sentinel quite a bit to just talking about KQL. So for me, right, personally, KQL came kind of easy. I was teaching it, right? And if you ever have taught something, right, in a workshop setting or whatever it happens to be, you know that you learn through your students' questions. Most times you have to go do the research to get the answer for that off-the-wall question, but then you know that answer next time. That's absolutely what happened for me. But what has spurred my most recent, more invigorated KQL kick is a meeting that I sat in back in November, an internal meeting at Microsoft. During that meeting, it was said that KQL knowledge, or lack of, for better clarity, I guess, is a barrier for our customers using our security products, right? I thought, oh my goodness, that should absolutely never be. KQL is simple. You saw some of that stuff today. You saw the SQL, the KQL tips and things like that, KQL really is simple. It's almost like SQL Plus. It's designed to be just as simple, just as easy, and even simpler in a lot of cases. It's so easy. And tell you what, that meeting, that description of KQL, that lack of ability from our customers, that really absolutely shocked me. Okay. So knowing KQL as well as I do, I just assumed it was as easy for customers as it was for me. Right? The customers I dealt with, those workshops, they absolutely saw that it was easy. But at the time, in the role that I was in then, within services within Microsoft, I didn't have the ability to reach all of our customers. Right? So these customers are coming back saying, hey, we don't know anything about KQL. I just literally hadn't talked to them yet. I'm not saying I'm that person that's going to be able to supply that for all of our customers, but we need people like me. We need people like this podcast. We need people like Alex and Johnny for this community to help amplify and promote this query language. But my current role as a cloud security advocate here at Microsoft, it's actually my job to do this now, right? I have to create things that reach more people in a much more powerful way. So what I ended up doing based off of that meeting was I literally just rolled up my sleeves, had a few days to think about it, used my KQL workshop experience, and began developing a program that exists today that's called, it's a series, Must Learn KQL. Hopefully some of you at least have heard about it. All right. The Must Learn KQL series is unique in that it literally, based on my planning, takes all modes of learning into account, just like those workshops, right? I wanted to figure out a way to take those hands-on experience workshops and turn it into something that we could do remotely, because like everything that happens these days, most work is remote. How are our customers going to learn this stuff except to be able to do it remotely in a way that's going to allow them to accomplish that? So the way this series works, there's a blog post that gets released. Right? Each blog post has hands-on opportunities using example queries. A lot of those top 8 that Johnny exhibited today, they're also included, and kind of walk through all of those. I promote our KQL playground, that same playground you saw earlier, that aka.ms/LA demo, stands for Log Analytics Demo, where the readers can log into the demo environment, type out and run the example queries that are included in the blog post. So they'll get actual results from running the examples. I'm very careful, very mindful to make sure that those queries are going to produce results, because there's nothing worse, I think, sitting in a workshop or something. Somebody gives you something as an example and it doesn't work, or it fails to produce what it was supposed to produce, right? So I'm very mindful and I update these constantly. That's the beauty of this series, because it is web-based, right? I'm able to update that constantly. In fact, I have some updating to do here shortly, because we're changing some things within the logs tool for our log analytics workspaces very shortly. And so that gives me the opportunity to make sure that everything, this book, this series, this entire thing is always current. Okay. The table of contents and all the examples and images are stored in a GitHub repository that's easy to find, right? See this screen here, Must Learn KQL, the series. There's a little short link underneath. Just use that short link to get there, aka.ms/mustlearnkql. Very easy to get to. In addition to the blog post and the query examples, there's also an ebook version. Remember I said we're going to introduce all modes of learning, right? It's also downloadable from the GitHub repo. It's PDF format, so anybody can get it, anybody can read it. Each time a new part or chapter is released for this series, the book is updated, including versioning, right? So readers always know that they have the latest version. The series is currently up to, what did I release yesterday? Part 15, I believe. Distinct Operator yesterday, actually getting into Take and Limit, I think this week sometime. The goal is to take a very logical approach, right? Explain everything. Make it relatable to day-to-day work. Provide examples for everything. Incentivize the learning experience. We have periodic contests built into this where readers can get something in return for their hard work. There's a contest going on now. If you go to the short link and go to part 13, click on that. Down at the bottom of the page, there's a contest that's running till February 1st when I randomly select people to get something. And I'll talk about that here in a second. So this is an interactive learning experience. By the time folks finish this, they should have an awesome base knowledge of KQL and be able to produce queries that actually provide value. Okay, so you'll be able to take this stuff, take the examples, or start creating your own stuff that's going to provide value for your environment. Every environment is absolutely different. Depending on the data you connect, the type of devices and services and applications that you need to monitor, your data will be different. But by utilizing this series, you're going to figure out how to get to your environment specific data. All right. So currently there's close to, I think, last count, 5,000 active blog readers for this series and about 2,000 active ebook readers. So every time the ebook's updated, there's about 2,000 people that go out and grab the latest version. Right. And there's, like I said, about 5,000 reading this series literally from end to end. Started with me from the beginning. I think we had about 100, but now it's expanded up to that number. So that's pretty awesome. From a community perspective, from my perspective, the more you can learn KQL, the easier it's going to be. The more quickly you're going to turn to KQL for just literally about everything. And I promise you, I am so geeky. Oh my goodness, with KQL. If I've had a rough day at work, if I feel overtaxed, a lot of people know this about me, but if you don't, one of my favorite TV shows in the world is the old 1970s $6 Million Man TV show. I watch it all the time, right? So if I have a bad day, I'm watching $6 Million Man. The wife knows. She walks in, she knows, oh, he's had a hard day. He's a little tired. Because it's mind-numbing television. But at the same time, you know what I'm doing? I have my laptop in my lap, and I'm actually typing out KQL queries. It's relaxing for me. I don't know why, but I absolutely love it. The current iteration of the series is focused on security, must learn KQL, and primarily in relation to what you saw today with Microsoft Sentinel and Defender. Okay. But once this current round is completed, this initial round for the Must Learn KQL series, I've already planned to kind of branch out beyond security. There's going to be an Intune Must Learn KQL series. There's going to be a specific to Defender. We're going to have some things around Azure Monitor and also using KQL to develop workbooks and things like that, right? Develop those visualizations. So there's a little bit more to this story, and this is the thing I'm absolutely proud about, because talking about this community aspect, this thing has literally grown on its own. So there's more to the story and really more to the value of what this series has absolutely come to represent. Okay. The series is free, by the way, not requesting anything. The only thing I request from anyone is that if you find something of value, share it with somebody, share it with a colleague, help them learn this stuff. Because like I said, KQL is literally everything. Okay. But I had a number of folks late last year ask how they can show their appreciation, right? I knew that a good friend of mine, John Saville, a lot of folks should be familiar with John, had a t-shirt shop where all of his proceeds literally went to charity. Okay, so I reached out to John. He gave me some tips, and this, what we call the Must Learn KQL merch shop, was born. Okay, there's some mugs, some kind of base mugs for this series that are listed out there that can be purchased. I also periodically release special mugs. Somebody asks us, hey, I'd love to have this or that or whatever. We can create those on the fly. I created one just for the holiday season. There was a Christmas mug that I've deprecated until next Christmas season. The mugs are slightly expensive, I would say, right? $15 for a mug or coffee cup. But as with John's efforts, literally all the proceeds go to charity. Okay. So during the holiday season, through this, we were able to send close to $200 to St. Jude's that was like a 2-week period. I thought that was super awesome. Since then, we're like close to like $500 or so. So I mean, I was absolutely gobsmacked. I was absolutely amazed by that. That just absolutely warms my heart. I think this is absolutely a really good sponsorship here. We'll be putting together what's called, just so get you all excited about this, what's called a Creators Cup very shortly. The original inventors of KQL within Microsoft are going to help with my efforts for the series and for some other things we're going to put together. We'll be doing some cool things as part of the series and a webcast and probably a podcast or two. But there will be this Creators Cup that highlights their accomplishments. They're the ones that are tasked with inventing this and maintaining this. So folks, you want to keep an eye out for that one. There's 4 case you didn't know, there's 4 co-inventors of KQL, and I'm not sure yet what this Creators Cup's going to look like. Whether we're going to it's going to be like 4 Musketeers or maybe Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but it's going to be something special. Okay, just not sure yet, but it should absolutely be fun. And speaking of custom cups, right? Hopefully you can see this. There is now a special KQL Cafe cup available in the merch store. So if you love this podcast, if you love Alex and Johnny, there is a cup for that, and all of those proceeds obviously go to St. Jude's. I was told yesterday that show guests will get a free cup. So I assume this kind of means that I'll be buying this one for myself, but that's okay. But yes, the KQL Cafe Edition cup is available now. All right. Any questions from me? I just really want to come on and like I said, promote and highlight how absolutely important KQL is to everything, whether you're working with anything data centric within Azure. That's my job. I'm an evangelist. I'm the one with the loudspeaker. People sometimes you can turn me off by stop following me or whatever, but I absolutely believe that this is the future. This is an absolute awesome career move if you jump down this route, looking at data science and using KQL for that. So anyway, thank you so much, like I said, for having me. I think you guys are doing an awesome job, and I think this is going to be an amazing podcast.
Awesome.
Thanks, Rob. Yeah.
Thanks a lot. Sure, if anyone has any questions. Because if not, I think one of the next subjects we want to talk about is what did you do with KQL this month? But I think it's also a nice question for you, Rod. Did you do anything? What's your favorite thing that you did last month with KQL?
Let's see. What was the favorite thing? So that's interesting. So for my first 2 years at Microsoft, I was in our services arm, right? So as a customer engineer and then as a security CSA. So I worked with lots and lots and lots and lots of customers. You heard me talk about the workshops, number of workshops. I think it's like over 120 some workshops that I did within that period of time, which is a lot. Yeah, I was pretty busy. So yeah, I was watching $6 Million Man a lot. But because of that, I made some really enormously valuable connections, and people still reach out to me, even though I'm in a kind of in a corporate role here at Microsoft now. They reach out to me, and I appreciate when they do, because just like those workshops where I learn from the questions, now the service folks reach out and ask me to help them with things, and so was it last week or week before? Somebody was looking for how to extrapolate costs out of the data for, I forget what the specific thing was at that point. I think it had to do with UEBA stuff. I forget. I can pull up that link here in a little bit, but I love that. People come to me with those types of questions, especially cost, because one of the things in my experience working with customers with Microsoft Sentinel, you give them a 15-minute demo, they're sold. And then the very next question out of their mouth is, what's it cost me? You're like, KQL is so awesome in that respect, to be able to pull out that information and show them immediately what that stuff might cost them, or at least give them some summation of what it might potentially cost based on, EPS or data ingestion and retention and stuff like that. So that was one of the cooler things I did past couple of weeks.
Sounds good. And Alex, what's your thing that you did last month?
Yeah, I besides doing M365 Defender, also advise my customers in all things, security posture, and despite all the tools that we have, I figured that, as we call it in our language, people might be living under a stone. And when it comes to end of life operating systems, I guess people also get confused. Why is 2004 already end of life while 1909 is still supported, with the with all those releases that we have in spring and then in fall. So people kind of lost. And of course, in Windows Defender for Endpoint, we have an awesome capability called Threat and Vulnerability Management, and we can look at data and go around. So I, as you figured, I thought, I want to actually be able to pull the data via KQL, right? I mean, so what I did, simple query here, and I will share it on the show notes. It's on my GitHub. I take device info, and I pull the OS platform. I also pull the software inventory information. I scope it, and then what we get here, in this case not, because in this tenant there is no such data. There's always my demo problem, demo gods, whatever. And unfortunately, I cannot connect to my customers where the real data is, right? Okay, so here are my little tenant, and what you get here is you get the end of life information. So I have here a Windows 10 device, and as TVM continues to improve, we'll have more of that information, or maybe I just made again a left outer whatever error, so I have to fine tune that. But yeah, the whole idea is, pull quickly information about your devices, how many you have of them, and get attention to end of service. And this, of course, might, allow you to do further things. Why not create a playbook and then post the data, and send it to your desktop management team, and tell them, hey, be aware, this is soon end of life, or by the way, we still have 100 devices that are already end of life. What are we going to do with them? Yeah. So it's not completely ready, but yeah, this is something I did last Friday. Yeah, back to you.
Cool. Also nice query, and you can easily see the state of your security, so that's good. So what I've done last month is, let me share my screen again. So I showed this one a bit earlier. I had this data set of the cloud providers one, and then I combine it with the sign-in logs, and I want to show all successful sign-ins. So for me, that's error code 0, 5125, 5140, 70043, and 70044. And those are for me, successful ones. And then what I do is with an evaluate, I evaluate and use the IPv lookup function to look at the list and compare the IP address from the sign-in logs with the net logs in my list. And when you run this query, it will check if there's any sign-ins from that list. Now in my demo tenant, it's at the moment pretty clean, so I don't have any records, but it's a good way to use it for your sign-in logs, and you can also use it for your Office activity. So for instance, if we do Office activity, and I'll also share this one on the GitHub later. So we have the user IP. No, it's the client IP. And then identity doesn't exist, so that's user ID. User ID. User principal doesn't exist. Let's just move this out of the way. And then we also see that there are no activities from those IP addresses. But as you can imagine, if an adversary wants to sign into your systems, then they could use a VPS or a VPN, and you want to be in control and you want to get alerts from those. So you can use these two queries to create a detection for that. I think that's one of the cooler things I've done this month. Also because if you use this function, you are able to use net blocks to compare those against single IP addresses. So in this list, I got like, I think it was about 700 records, but it contains about 1 million IP, about 6 million IP addresses. So you can easily exclude things or mark things to be alerted on. So that's the thing I did last month.
That's awesome. Hey, you mind if I share one more thing?
Yes, of course.
Sure.
Awesome.
Speaking of, let's see if I can find it now. Speaking of cool things to do and trying to promote KQL, you see that? So I created a KQL query. Somebody tasked me with this. They bet me I couldn't do it. I created one that creates a TIE fighter. It says, "May the force be with you." You can literally do anything with KQL. That's just proof.
Wow. I love it. Cool.
So yeah, maybe also as an encouragement. So, to those who are listening in right now or afterwards, if you have anything you'd like to present, demo, let us know. There are 1,000 ways to reach us: Twitter, email, GitHub, issue, submission, whatever. We would like to hear from you. As we said, our mission is, to build a community, and it will be like always. You have lots of people that consume, and that's fine. I think that's normal. I guess, Rock, you can tell a story in the days when you run my IT forum, like millions of people going through the forums, and then you probably have somewhere in the thousands of the regular contributors, that actually are not too shy to ask the question, or those people that contribute. But that's totally fine. Nevertheless, anyone out there has a cool idea, let's try to bring this community forward and give it some life. Yeah.
Okay, so we have a raised hand from Duncan.
Hey, Duncan.
Hi, Alex. So good to see you again. It is some time ago. So I was wondering how you expect people to contribute to what you guys are doing, right? Because I like it a lot, to be honest. And I think I've also probably some useful things that I can share with you guys or whatever. But how do you want to receive that information? Some smart queries and whatever. And of course, I will remove everything that points to our organization, so that's a kind of anonymized or whatever. But how do you want to receive such stuff?
Yeah, so we have basically all kinds of options. I mean, for those people that are on Twitter and have their own repo or Gist, that's all fine. Tweet it out. Hashtag KQLCafe. It's funny, we didn't do anything, right? And we got like 250 followers, and everybody's all in. We're even already in books. We're referenced, and Jenny and I were like, holy shit, things are running ahead of us. So, that's one way. But now not everybody has Twitter. Not everybody has a GitHub repo by themselves. So yes, we will also have a repository in our KQL Cafe. Let me quickly show you that, where, people, this is our website, but actually this is a GitHub organization by itself, just with a website repo. And there's going to be another repo called community. Another way, of course, if you want to reach wider, I would like also to mention that there is the Microsoft 365 Defender Advanced Hunting. Now, I don't know, there might be a little bit more authoring and validation before it gets approved there. So if you're looking for a pragmatic way, there's a GitHub here. Now, again, not everybody feels like committing and pulling things. So otherwise, I guess we'll maybe I have to describe something on our website, a way how people can submit their things. Yeah, that's kind of the idea. So either self-hosted in GitHub or Guest, or you can submit it to us and directly, or we would be happy to submit your code you would like to share. Yeah, does that work out?
Yeah, that sounds cool. Thanks, Alex.
Okay.
So that also brings us to the challenge of this month. One of the folders in the repository will be the KQL challenge. I think what would be a cool thing is I already shared the queries. Let me put them up again. So my idea was it would be fun if we have these queries, and I used it to do in the sign-in logs. But if you can create a query, a detection, a hunting query or use this list, or maybe get an own list and just share your ways to combine like sign-in logs, office activity with IP addresses or with other intel, TLP wide, of course, so you don't have to share any private threat intel, but just so that people can understand how they can join data with actual data. So I think that would be the challenge of the month, and it would also get you a nice reward afterwards.
Yeah, we'll be giving out mugs for winners. Yeah, great, cool. Yeah, do we have anything else?
I think
at the time. Oh yeah, we're at 8 o'clock here CET. So yeah, then I would like to say thank you everyone for joining. Very pleased to see some familiar names. Even people I've worked with long time ago, like Duncan, and all others who participated. And yeah, it's a community thing, so maybe a little bit different than those live events, like what do they call them? Well, those tech events, where you have all those MVPs talking and other people that like to talk a lot. Our intention is really to build a community, and I'm very thankful for there are a couple of people speaking up, raising hands, so very interactive. Thank you for that. I think from Johnny and myself, and yes, I mean Johnny and I, we were always like, okay, if 10 people attend, we're already happy. We had 36 people at its high. I guess some of them might be following up later. I will do my best. This is also for me a new challenge. Beside doing technical things, having to start about how to cut videos. So if there's any volunteer out there who loves to do those things, you can join the club. But yes, we will make this available offline for later watching, and we'll definitely, you gave us a good impulse, starting spirit to now actually work towards the February and March episode of the KQL Cafe. Yeah. So yeah, with that, thank you for attending. Johnny, maybe some words from yourself as well, or?
It was really fun, and like that there are a lot of people. Also, a big thanks to our guest Trent for taking the time to be here. It's really cool, man. Thanks.
Well, thank you so much. I really enjoyed myself, except for, trying to figure out how to get back on. But yeah, that was great.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad it worked out.
Okay. Well, as they say in Dutch, tot de volgende keer. À la próxima. Bis zum nächsten Mal. Till next time in February. Thanks for attending.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Alex. And Jan, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
And thank
Bye-bye.
you everyone for a great session. Thank you.
You're welcome.